think I'm gonna quit game collecting.
My life is like a video game.
Okay, not really. But let's talk retro gaming in 2023 and just game collecting in general. Kind of sucks, to be honest. I have three main reasons why I think it's an issue currently for game collecting and why it's so much harder now than it was when I started. One, I think the one everyone knows and just realizes immediately, it's expensive. It can get really expensive. It's hard to tell for me sometimes how much more expensive it is, because if you've seen the room tour from last year, it's been about a year now, a little over actually. I have a ton of games already. I already own a huge amount of games that I already wanted, and some of these have gone up insanely in value, and I don't notice because once I have it, I don't care. Don't really care what it's worth. I already own it. I don't need to buy it again. So it was hard for me to notice, but looking at things that I want in the future, or that I'm looking into buying and seeing how expensive they are, it's a little ridiculous for some things. I understand that, games are no longer being made, people want access to them. Some games are just never going to get re-released. It's not really possible to get re-released. So I understand why some of those games have some value, but then there's stuff like, why is Mario Sunshine $50? Is that necessary? So that's one. The other major problem that I don't think people see as often, this doesn't happen until you've been collecting for a while, sometimes it's accidental, is space. Games take up space. You need shelves, you need somewhere to stick them, but also you gotta look at its systems and where you're gonna set up TVs to have these, and when you start game collecting, it's usually not that big of a deal. You have one, maybe two systems, it's not an issue. But game collecting is the kind of thing where a lot of times you don't start game collecting. You start by playing games that you like, and then you want to play old games that you liked, and then you want to play old games that you missed, and then it's, you grew up with the PlayStation, and well, I never really played the 64, but everyone likes the 64, so let's see what everyone's talking about with that. So you buy a 64. Now you got 10 64 games. And then you're like, oh, these are really cool. I really like Zelda. And now I want to play the original Zelda, so now I have an NES. And then there's a Zelda on the Super Nintendo, so I'm going to buy that one. And now you have Link to the Past. And this kind of just grows, and even if you only have a handful of games for each system, eventually you end up with, 20 systems and 10 15 games each, and now you're at 300 games, and that doesn't sound like a lot, but it adds up pretty quickly. And then you just continue to buy new games for those systems. Oh, I have this system, what else is good on it? And eventually you end up looking like this, and you have a giant collection full of stuff, and it takes up a huge amount of space. This takes up an entire room in my house. Part of that is that I choose to let it take up an entire room in my house. I don't just have games in here. But last year's game tour, this room was basically just games. There was nothing else in here. I had a computer for videos. I had some toys and stuff on display. But it was mostly just games and game related stuff. And lastly, the other big issue is accessibility. And that might seem weird because you can just go on eBay and buy games, and that's fair. But I don't think that is the best way to go buy games. That is the most expensive way to buy games. The problem is getting games outside of that is gotten a lot harder. And I'm not saying you need to get games from yard sales for pennies and a $5 box of games and you find thousands of dollars in them. Not talking about that. That's ridiculous. If you expect that while game collecting, you are setting yourself up for failure, and that's just stupid. Honestly, anyone who complains that you can't go to a yard sale and get a box of retro games for $10 anymore, go fuck yourself. You're annoying. It's ridiculous. You're not gonna find that. You really shouldn't have ever been able to find that. You were just ripping people off, and sure, it was at their own expense, but they did it to themselves. They didn't know what they had, and they sold it. I get it, but to expect that is kind of stupid. But I just mean in general, random games that aren't really worth a lot, people don't sell to their game stores anymore. They just put it on eBay because the game store is going to give them like 50, 60%. And I get it, you would rather get the full value out of it, and selling on eBay is not that hard. So it's understandable, but I don't know, it kind of takes away from the hobby for people who actually like the hobby. If everyone's selling on eBay at full price, it just makes it harder to get anything because the only way to get it is to go on eBay, and a lot of times I don't know what I'm looking for. So let's actually start with accessibility as the first core issue of game collecting in this modern today. Your game store probably doesn't have a good selection. That's not to say they don't have a lot of games. My local game store has a ton of games, and they have a ton of high-end games, like really high-end games. They've had Rule of the Roses, the PS2 horror game that's like $500-$600, like 4 times in the last year. They get it regularly. They've had Bonk's Adventure several times. They've had the Flintstones game, I think, once or twice. They've had the Jetsons game. I think they currently have the Jetsons game, actually, on the NES. These are all expensive games. These are all $100 plus games, and they're quite sought after. They get high-end games. They also get low-end garbage. They have a ton of Wii games and 360 games that no one's ever going to buy. And that's good. That range is good. I like buying these stupid Wii games. If you watched the Game Room Tour last year, you saw I had an entire shelf of bullshit Wii games because it's fun. But they don't have a lot of that middle range. That $30 to, say, $80 game. And I know that's a really big range. In my opinion, anything from the $70, $80 range, which is about the price of a new game, and lower is reasonably priced. That might not be the opinion for everyone. Some people don't like paying $70 for a new game. That's fair, but this is just for me when I shop for games. If it's about the price of a new game, give or take a couple bucks, not really that worried about it. That's what I was going to spend on a game anyway. Anything lower is good, and, well, yours $5, $10, $15 games can be good. Most of the time, your decent stuff starts at about $30. So from 30 to 80 is what I consider a middle-priced, reasonably priced game. That is something I am willing to pay for the most part without really considering it. It looks good, or I want it. I'm willing to pay somewhere around that price for it without much of an issue. So thinking of those type of games, your Marios are usually in that range, your Zeldas are usually in that range. There are exceptions, like I believe Twilight Princess on the GameCube or the Wii U. Might be the Wii U one is like over $100, but most of the time they fall in that range of like $30 to $80. They're not usually that crazy. That's where you get your decent games, The games that sold a lot and have, they don't really have any scarcity issues. The reason they're expensive is just because everyone wants it. If you buy a 64, you're buying Mario 64, you're buying a Zelda, you're buying Ocarina of Time, you're buying Majora's Mask, you're buying Smash Brothers, you're buying, Mario Kart. So these games all hold a relative value between, 30, 50, something in that area. And that's fair. To me, that's fair. They're worth it. They're fun games. You're going to get your money out of them. Not a big deal. But the problem is, everyone wants those games, but also everyone has those games. So your game store's not going to get them a whole lot. My local game store will actually pay quite a bit more than usual on those games because they're going to sell and they're what people actually want. Like, it's what brings people in the door. It's what gets them into buying a console. As an example, Mario Kart Wii is worth about $30. If I take it to my local game store, they will give me like $20 for a complete copy. That's pretty close to value. When you consider that if I sell it on like eBay or something, I'm going to have to pay to ship it and, tracking, protection, stuff like that. You can charge for that, but people aren't going to spend $30 and then $10 in shipping. They're going to want it for $25, $35 with shipping. So if I'm getting $20 out of it from my local game store, that's fair. They're not making a huge profit on that game when they sell it. But they're not, because they're trying to get people to buy systems and to keep coming back. That gets someone in the door to buy something. This is something most stores do. For example, if you work at like a dollar store, they get a lot of items that are worth way more than $1. They sell at like Walmarts and stuff for a couple dollars, and it's just to get people in. The dollar store's not making any money on that. For a long time, eggs were like the easy example. They would get a dozen eggs for $1 when they're like 5 at the grocery store, and that was fine because they didn't need to make money on that. They got you in for that one item, and you bought, $30 worth of other shit that you didn't need. Tangents. So they don't really get those kind of games that often because that's what everyone wants. And if everyone wants it, everyone already has it. Everyone's buying it. So they don't get them, or they get them and they sell immediately. The problem is when everyone has those kind of games, because they aren't really hard to find, they're more just desired. Most people just put them on eBay because they see they're worth $40-50. They can sell that and not have to worry about, losing huge amounts of money. They don't really care. It's not, when you get like a $100 game or $200 game, people get concerned with shipping it and mailing it. And that's understandable, putting a cartridge in, a box or a bubble mailer and hoping that it doesn't get destroyed by the postal service, because that happens, is kind of risky. A lot of people don't want to do that and lose the money. So it's easier just to take that to your local game store. Say you bought it for, $20-30 at a flea market, and then you took it to your game store and got $300 for it because it's worth $500. You're usually happy with that. Like, I made 10 times my money. I'm not going to complain. I don't care that I didn't get $500. I got $300 from $30. It was free money. That's fine. And if I'm going to get store credit, I could get more, and that, sure. That's just easier. So that happens quite a bit. But when you get those mid-range games, it's not really that much of a loss if I sell it, on eBay. If I lose the $30 game, it's not that big of a deal. But also, I'm making $30 on this game for not really doing a whole lot of work, and I can continue doing that and make decent money. So a lot more people are willing to do those games through eBay. The problem is then you have to go to eBay to buy things, and eBay sucks. I hate buying on eBay. It is my least favorite way to buy pretty much anything. Sometimes it's the only way to buy things that you want, consistently. If I want something, I have to just go to eBay to get it. A lot of times it's hard to find in person, but I don't want to shop on eBay. It's boring. Online shopping in general just isn't my favorite thing in the world outside of a specific need. I need this thing, I'll buy it online. That's fine. But when it comes to hobby shopping, collectibles or shoes or whatever, I don't want to go online. I want to go see it in person and see if I really want it, because it's easy to think I want it online where it looks good, and then I get it in person. I'm like, it looks good, but not for me. Or I thought this looked like a fun game, but I don't know. Now that I have it, I don't really care. That happens quite a bit. That's what I mean by accessibility. Your game store doesn't have a lot of those mid-range games, and that kind of sucks. It just takes the fun out of it, at least for me. When I can't go to my game store and find something I really want, it's kind of lame, kind of boring. Like I said, I don't like shopping online for this, and if my game store doesn't have it, there's only a couple in the area, and there's really only one I can get to consistently, and if they don't have something, I'm not getting anything anytime soon, and that kind of takes the fun out of it for me. Next up, let's go to the other one. Let's do pricing next. Pricing is an issue. Games are insanely expensive. Depending on what system you're shopping for, it can get ridiculous. The easiest one to point out is probably because it's the most popular and most expensive at the moment, in terms of together, is the GameCube. GameCube is insanely popular to collect for right now, and it's also insanely expensive. Some of your easy, good games are over $100. Fire Emblem, Chibi Robo, F-Zero, Wario World, they're all $100 plus. And even some of your decent games like Sunshine, Wind Waker, Twilight Princess, these can all go for $30-40 plus. And that's not terrible, but again, those are reasonable prices. But everything, your Metroid games are $50-60. Everything is just high. I'm seeing things even a Hot Wheels game or the Naruto games are all games basically start at $30 for a GameCube game. If you have less than $100 when you're looking for GameCube games, you're probably not getting anything, or you're not getting anything worth buying at that point. It is an exceedingly expensive system for not really a good reason. I get it's popular, but it's not like it's just too expensive in my opinion. That's not like the worst system. It's just the worst of like the popular systems. There's obviously systems where like everything costs a fortune. SNK has the Neo Geo, and like every game on that's like hundreds of dollars. That, you know what I mean? The Saturn is expensive to collect for. Even Dreamcast is really expensive at this point, and like some of these systems are just going to be expensive. So if you're worried about price, I do recommend thinking about that before picking a system. That's why I picked the Xbox as one of the things I wanted to collect heavy for. It's a cheap system. It's the same generation as the GameCube and the PS2, but it's by far the cheapest, with the expensive games being like $100. I think the most expensive game is like $200 for Futurama. Like, that's like the top of the line Xbox game, and it's a couple $100. It's easy. It's not like a huge deal. The only thing like really high end on that system is Steel Battalion. That's a little bit of an exception. The game isn't super expensive. The controller is like $500 though. That's a little bit different. That's a peripheral that's huge. That's a whole thing. But outside of that, the games don't really cross $100. Even some of the high end games like Def Jam Fight for New York is like $80. Like, they're not that bad. So with that being said, you can buy games for like a reasonable price on one system that are like a fortune on other systems, and you know, just to save yourself some money. But sometimes you can't do that. The Pokemon games on GameCube are just like $150 to $200 a piece, and like, they're not re-released. They're not on any other system. They're not obviously not going to be on the Xbox or the PlayStation. You have one way to play those games outside of emulation, and not everything can emulate GameCube. I'm not a huge into emulation personally. It's just not how I play games. But from my understanding, GameCube and like PS2 and Xbox era emulation isn't the best. It's doable. I've seen more recently with some handhelds that people are putting out are like able to do it without a problem. So maybe it's not like super hard if you have a modern computer or whatever. But I'm not a computer person. I do have a modern computer. I think we talked about that a while ago. I did buy a modern computer for editing, but I don't use my computer for games like that. That's just not something I'm particularly interested in. So outside of emulation, which I do recommend, again, I don't do it, but I recommend it for anyone who wants to play retro games and doesn't want to deal with this nonsense that is sometimes an issue. Just emulate the games. It's not that big a deal. If your computer can handle it, just go for it. If you have a system that can handle it, just go for it. But if you want to collect these retro games, if you want to buy games, and sometimes you just want to buy games just to have them. Like, I really like Pokemon. I have pretty much every Pokemon game outside of a handful of spin-offs. It's hard to remember what spin-offs I do and don't have, mostly because there's just a lot of them. But I have mostly every Pokemon game, and I just like buying Pokemon games. I like collecting Pokemon. They can get very expensive for no reason. Why is this like $400? It's not worth it. I have like 3 copies of that game, just in various conditions. I have a complete copy, a plastic case box copy without the outer box, and I think I have a loose copy somewhere, or maybe I got a box for that, I don't remember. But like, the game is insanely expensive. It's a great game. It's probably my favorite Pokemon game. But why is it so expensive? I wanted to buy a copy of Heart Gold, like complete like that, and it's like $300-$400. Like, why? It's Pokemon. It's not worth $300-$400. It's just not. And I refuse to buy it. I'm not gonna buy that. I own the game already. I just need the outer box. I don't even want the Pokewalker. I have like 6 Pokewalkers floating around in my like junk drawers of shit. So I just it gets too much sometimes, and I get that. And it's kind of always been that way. And real quick to kind of, I don't want to say justify the pricing, but in defense of the pricing, if people are willing to pay it, people are going to charge it. That's just how it works. If someone puts a game up for $100 and you buy it, even though everyone else is selling it for $30, $40, $50, guess what? The game's now worth $100. People are going to raise their prices to meet that standard of what you just bought, and things are going to get more expensive. If you were continuously buying games at them prices, people are going to post them at them prices because that's what they feel it's worth. You need to ask for a lower price and push for a lower price. Don't buy games when they're that expensive. Just wait till you find a cheaper copy. That's my suggestion. That's what I personally do. I usually don't buy games at huge prices unless there's a reason. Now, some games I understand the pricing. I don't feel like getting up to get it, but I have a copy of Clay Fighter's Sculptor's Cut on the 64. That was a rental-only Blockbuster game. Yes, you can get Clay Fighters for cheap. Clay Fighters 63 and a third or whatever is a very cheap game. It's like $20 or something. It's not a huge game. But if you want so you can play the game. That's the point here. You can play that game with no problem. If you want the special fancy version that has a couple extra characters, that was a rental exclusive, it's like $1,500. I own a copy. We bought it for, I believe, $400. When I bought it for $400, I did not mind spending $400 because it was a collecting piece. It was not meant to be played. It's not something I care to play consistently. I want a complete 64 set because I thought it would be fun to do, and it has been for the most part. But it is a very expensive game. I knew that going in, and I bought it. But I know that's expensive, and I understand why. Like, it makes sense why that game is worth so much money. It was it wasn't for retail. It wasn't sold. It was rentable at a Blockbuster. And when Blockbuster shut down or stopped selling 64 games or whatever, they sold them off. So it makes sense. What doesn't make sense is why is Heart Gold and Soul Silver the same price, or was this roughly the same price at the time? Like, it's just insane. Like, they sold 10+ million copies. Like, there are millions of copies of those games out there. Why are they so expensive? And I do understand that you can get them without the outer box. The cardboard box is always expensive. So say you just want the basic version, just Heart Gold, Soul Silver, cart, and plastic DS case. Sure. You're still looking at like $120, $130 or something. To me, that is an issue. A copy of Emerald loose is like $80. To me, that is an issue. These games sold millions of copies. Like tens of millions of copies. Why are they so expensive? They don't need to be. They're so regularly available, and like everyone has a copy of a Pokemon game floating around somewhere. They don't need to be that expensive. It's a ridiculous price point. I don't see a reason to purchase them at that price point. I personally won't purchase them at that price point. It's an absurd price point. And lastly, the final issue I have with game collecting currently is space. And this actually is going to lead to the next video, or possibly the end of this video, we'll see. Space when game collecting becomes an issue. One, because most of the time when you collect games, you're not just collecting games. You're collecting games and game paraphernalia. Like, I have a ton of games. I also have a ton of amiibo and big collector's edition that come with statues and boxes and plushies and random shit like a Zelda VHS tape because it's cool. It's Majora's Mask. I love Majora's Mask. It's my favorite Zelda game. And like, it's an advertisement. That's really cool. But you start ending up with this extra stuff. And extra stuff takes up more space. And as that extra stuff takes up more space, you get more games that take up also more space. And that's just storage. That's just putting the games on a shelf. This takes up an entire wall here. And then some, because there's actually some more still on that wall over there. But then you have the other stuff that you have. Like I said, I have a ton of amiibo and plushies and boxes and stuff. And like on this wall behind me, which we're going to do a tour after this, in this wall behind me, I have an entire display case that's just filled with stuff that like is really cool and I really like, but it takes up so much space. And then you like when you move away from that, like say you don't want to collect any of the extra stuff, you just want the games, right? And you still have to store those. That doesn't include systems. Systems take up space. I have like 20 something systems. I have every Nintendo system, every PlayStation, almost every Xbox. I'm missing the new one. I don't have a Series X currently, but so pretty much every Xbox, every Sega system, and then like a Atari 2600. I have Intellivisions. I have random like other systems, and I have like a bunch of handheld bullshit that I just like to collect. And I have 2 arcade cabinets. Even even if we don't count the arcade cabinets and we don't count the extra stuff, just your Nintendo, Xbox, Sega, and PlayStation systems, you're looking at like 25 consoles or something. Like, it's a lot. It adds up really quickly. Nintendo alone has 7 consoles plus handhelds. PlayStation has 5 consoles plus 2 handhelds. Xbox has 4 consoles. Sega has 4 consoles, but also the Genesis has like 3 add-ons that also add to what you can collect. So if you just buy those basic consoles, right, you end up with a lot of consoles to collect for. Even just hooking them up to a TV is a lot of work, but if you're like me, I don't want to have them upscale and stretched to my giant-ass new TV, so I have a CRT TV in my closet right now. That's for the older games, and that's another thing that takes up space. Mine, I don't even have a big one. I have a relatively small, 20-inch, I think, CRT TV, and it takes up room. I gotta have something to put it on, and then I have to have space to hook up all the systems that go to it. I have to have space to hook up all the systems to my main TV. It adds to the space that you're using for this, and between storage and accessibility and being able to use the games that you have, I don't want to have all my games in a bunch of boxes somewhere under under steps or whatever. Then I can't get to them. That takes away from my ability to use them. So it adds to the amount of space they take up, and that is a problem. It's annoying. The amount of room it takes up to have all these games is kind of excessive. Again, this takes up an entire room of my house, and honestly, before I made this video, it was taking up the entire room of this house, an entire room, but also I had shit stacked everywhere because it was too much stuff. I still couldn't fit it in this room. That leads to the point of this video, which is I'm done game collecting. Just kind of done. I'm selling off a huge portion of my game collection. From valuable to unvaluable, doesn't really matter. I'm just selling off a bunch of the game collection. I've pared it down to things I actually want and will play and need, or in a couple cases, game collections that I just don't want to get rid of. For instance, the Wii U, keeping all my Wii U games, that's not going to change. Even the imports and stuff, I'm not changing. I'm still going to collect those imports, and I want to finish that set. I do have the complete US set, but I want to finish a worldwide set for the Wii U. Wii U is one of my favorite systems, so much so I have it tattooed on my hand. Love the Wii U, not going to change. Same thing with the 64, I'm going for a complete set. Almost there at this point, and that's not going to change. I'm not getting rid of any of those games. Xbox, going for a complete set. Not going to change, not getting rid of any of those games. But the Wii, the original Wii, I don't need all those games. Some of them I'm never going to play. Some of them I don't care. We're getting rid of some of them. PlayStation 2, same thing. I had a ton of PS2 games. We're getting rid of a lot of them. PS1. I don't even like the PS1. I'm getting rid of 80% of it. I hate that system. It's my least favorite system, literally ever. With the exception of the Saturn, which I've never really played. I own one, and I own 2 games for it. But the games are so expensive for the Saturn, I've never even really considered truly collecting for it. I just happened into one and bought it. But the PS1's one of my least favorite systems. I can't fucking stand it. So half that shit is just going. It takes up too much room. I need more room for other things. Room for other activities. The thing with game collecting is it's often not your only hobby. Maybe for you, game collecting is your only hobby. It's the only thing you do. It's not for me. I collect a lot of things. I'm a big fan of movies. I have a ton of movies in my living room and books. I love reading. Ton of comics, ton of manga, and just a bunch of regular books. I just read a lot. I collect toys and a lot of other things. I've been doing a lot of Legos lately, and I like plushies and shoes and stuff, and like I have a makeup vanity in the other room that like would probably work better in here. I get dressed and stuff in here. This is where all my stuff is. It would be much easier if it was here, but it's not. It's in another room because I don't have space in here. And like it gets a little much after a while with having no space for anything else because the games take up all of the room. Now, to be fair, I have a 2-bedroom house. I could move some of this stuff out of this room. I don't necessarily have to have the computer in here. I don't necessarily have to keep my clothes in here. I don't have to keep everything in this one room. However, I also don't want to flood like my living room with games and statues and plushies and toys. Like, I'm an adult who has a house with, a wife and like people come over. Like, I don't want to have my entire house covered in, the gaming shit. I don't want to go to bed and have like just piles of Legos put up in there, like. And some of the stuff is in other rooms, like my movies are in another room, my books are in another room. That makes sense. Like that's fine. It is what it is. But I don't want to like throw it all over the house. I don't want the house covered in this. It becomes too much, So I try to keep it centralized to this room, and for the most part it works. But it just gets overwhelming. And I think that's the theme here. Sometimes collecting can become overwhelming. Like I said, if you watched the last video where I did a game room tour, it's like a year ago, I have so many games. I have too many games. It gets to a point where I don't know what I want to play because there's too much that I have and haven't had a chance to play. And then I don't want to play anything because it's frustrating. I have so many games to play. I don't know what I want to buy anymore because I have so many games I don't remember what I have anymore. I don't know what I'm looking for. I don't know what to collect for. It just becomes too much. It's too much choice, too much to look at, and it just becomes a little daunting where I don't want to collect games anymore because I have a billion games and I never have time to play any of them because I have, a job and I do this and other hobbies that take up time. And it's like I bought 10 games the other day. I haven't played any of them, and that's just added to my backlog of 300 games that I haven't had a chance to play. And there's a new game coming out that I want to play, and now I'm looking at buying this game, and it's like, why? Why am I looking at buying this game? I have a million games I haven't played. It becomes overwhelming. It becomes too much. And I don't want to do it. So I'm not. I'm just not. I'm going to be taking a step back from collecting games. And in the next video, we're going to do a game room tour. This is kind of just the discussion portion, and we're going to do a quick tour of the new room and how I've changed it since then. And you'll see some of the changes, but I cut down the game collection basically in half. I want to say I've pulled out like 400 or 500 games, maybe more, to just get rid of. Just to sell them off and get rid of them. I don't care. Don't care if I get full value for them. I don't care if I end up just like trading them into my game store. I'm going to try to sell them on eBay just because it's so much, like I would like to make some of that money back. But I honestly just don't care. I just wanted the space back. And currently I haven't gotten that space back because they're still here. They're taking up a good chunk of this corner over here in boxes because they have to get posted and sold, but I just want my space back. I want room to collect other things and do other things. Like I said, I have other hobbies, and I want other things. And game collecting's fun, don't get me wrong. I enjoy it, I like having these games, I like buying games, I like playing games. But I think it got away from me a little bit. I think it got to a point where I felt like I had to get everything that came up every time something new that I didn't have came in, became available for me. Like I had at my job games coming quite a bit, or they used to come in quite a bit. They don't come in as much anymore. But it was really easy to just pick up a game for cheap, and it's like, I might play it. It looks interesting. I'll just go buy it because I have the ability to do so, and it's something I don't own already, so I'm just gonna buy it. Or I own this game on the PS4, but here's an Xbox copy, so I'm gonna pick that up because at one point I had a Series X and a base PS4, so like the Xbox version was probably a little bit better. Let's pick that version up because it's here. And a lot of times that would happen. And I just ended up with like 3 and 4 copies of the same game on different systems. It's like, do I need that? Do I need Doom 2016 on 4 different systems? Like, no, not really. I don't need that. And like, sometimes it's fun to have, the same game on multiple systems. For example, I'm a big fan of Dragon Ball. But the Budokai games are available on PlayStation and GameCube and the Wii, depending on which one you're getting. You can get Budokai 1 through Tenkaichi. They're all on the PlayStation, and then there's a couple on the GameCube and a couple of the Tenkaichi games on the Wii. And I think all of them, or almost all of them. I think I'm missing one from the GameCube or something. But I like Dragon Ball, and it's fun to, it's to me, it's cool that I have, all of these different versions of the same Dragon Ball game just because I like collecting Dragon Ball stuff. That's neat. I think that's fun. But ultimately, do I need that for everything? No. With Dragon Ball or with Tomb Raider or with, just whatever game. I have The Last of Us on PS3, 4, and 5. But I love The Last of Us. It's one of my favorite games. So yes, I'm going to keep those. Do I need, Lego DC Undercover or whatever, Lego City Undercover on like 4 systems? No. Do I need all the Lego games on everything from the DS to the Wii to the Wii U to the PlayStation 3 and 4 and Xbox? No. No, I don't. I have Lego Indiana Jones on like a dozen systems. Like this, the game's fucking everywhere. The game is on everything. And I have them all because they kept showing up. And I just bought them and it was like, oh, I like the Lego games. I'll buy this one. I don't know if I have it. And now I have a ton of Lego games and they're everywhere. They're on every system. It's just not necessary. I can get them all on one system, play on that, and that's good. That's good enough. I don't need them on everything. It's too much. So a lot of what I got rid of was stuff like that. There's also some just high-end games that I got for really cheap. Some RPGs that are hundreds of dollars, and I got them for basically nothing. They just kind of fell into my lap. And, like, it was cool when I got them, but I'm not going to play them. I have no interest. The Lunar games on the PS1, I don't care. I'm not going to play them. I don't like the PS1. I don't like RPGs that much. But they're expensive, so I held on to them because what if I do want to play them one day? I'm never going to buy these games. I'm not going to spend $200 on these games or whatever. So, like, maybe I should just keep them. And I did for, like, 3 years now. And now I'm just, like, I'm not going to play them. I'm just not. But someone else might. Someone else probably wants these games and just can't find them or can't find them reasonably. So, like, do I need to hold on to them and keep them in a collection of not use? I don't think so. Just get rid of them. I can buy something else. For that much money, I can buy something I want. Something I'm going to use. And I think that's a little bit more important. I would much rather get rid of those 2 Lunar games and buy a copy of the Gold that I want. Just because I'd rather have that. At least that would be interesting for me. Like, I would care that I have both Gold and Silver complete like that. But I don't care that I have the collector's editions or special editions of Lunar 1 and 2. I just don't. They don't mean anything to me. They're just games on a shelf. And that's, like, a small thing. But, like, if I got rid of this whole corner full of games that I don't want and, like, reorganized a little bit, I could get another arcade cabinet. I really like my 2 arcade cabinets. They don't get as much use as I would like them to. Mostly because I just have 2 fighting games. I have Marvel vs. Capcom and Mortal Kombat 2. So I don't get as much use as I would like to, mostly because I'm bad at the games. I do love them. I love both games. I'm a big Mortal Kombat fan, and I really love Marvel vs. Capcom, but I'm bad at them, so they don't get a huge amount of use. But I would love to get like the Simpsons arcade cabinet or NBA Jam. NBA Jam, the little countercade for like 2 something. I would love to buy that. That would be great. I love NBA Jam. And it's small. I could stick it on top of something that I already have. One of these smaller shelves I have. That'd be really cool. But I don't have the space. Like I don't have the space for another arcade cabinet in here. But if I got rid of this corner full of shit that I don't want, I would. I would also have the money to buy it because this would probably pay for it. And like that's just if I kept it to gaming. If you go, take a step back from just buying new games and like just to look at other things I would like, there's like 4 Shantae skateboards. I have 2 of them. I would like to get the other ones. There's a couple of more that I want. Don't really want to spend the money on them right now. Don't really have anywhere to stick them. I don't have the wall space to hang up stuff because the shelves take up so much space. And like that money could go towards my shoe collection or new makeup if I want new makeup, or really anything that I want. It doesn't really matter, to be honest. It's just, it takes up space, and it's not like taking up space, but it's not really worth anything, so like whatever. Like say, I have a lot of CDs. I love collecting CDs. I don't really have a way to put them out right now, so they're just in boxes, but it doesn't matter because they're worthless, right? Like they're like $1 at most. Like no one's gonna buy your CDs, right? So I don't care that they're in a box because I don't need them out to use them. I usually just use my phone for stuff. But I like having CDs because I like to listen to music on a better radio. I don't have that better radio right now. My last one broke and I just haven't had a chance to replace it. Or really a need to replace it. So it's something that I could live without, but I like having it. But it's not worth anything, so it doesn't matter to me that they're just in a box somewhere. Like, that's fine. But this is like thousands of dollars worth of games. Some games themselves are worth hundreds of dollars. And they're just sitting there. And like, they're not getting used. They're never going to get used. It just feels like a waste. The gaming, I want to call it a bubble. Some people seem to think that the gaming is never going to come down, right? Like, it's just going to keep growing and growing. I don't think so. I think that for certain games, that is absolutely true. I think your, big titles, your Marios, your Zeldas, your Pokemons, even like PlayStation stuff, like, I don't think PlayStation has any, like, but like your Final Fantasies and stuff, your Dragon Quest, the ones that are expensive are going to stay expensive because the people, even with re-releases, people want the original copy. That's just a collecting thing that happens with these big franchises. But stuff like Lunar, if that got re-released on like the PS4 or PS5 and like Switch tomorrow, I think that would take a hit in value because who wants to play it on the PS1? It's just the only way it's really available. It's only available like a couple ways. There's only not really a huge re-release market for that game. So like, if it got re-released, I think it would tank the value in those games. It's just a waste. Those games could be being played by someone who actually wants them, and I could have the money for something I actually want, and the space for something I actually want. So that's my opinion on current retro gaming, or just game collecting in general right now. It's just not as fun as it used to be. It was really fun when I started, and I could, I didn't have really a lot of games. I had the games I grew up with and some stuff I'd picked up along the way. My mom wasn't really a big fan of us trading in games. She didn't like that. If we bought it, we had it. That was it. So like I had all of my games from when I grew up. But over time, I think I just got too far away from what I was doing when I first started collecting. I didn't actually start collecting. I never really started collecting games. I just kind of bought games I wanted to play, and I have a habit of not getting rid of things that I like. But over time, that habit of not getting rid of things that I like turned into a collection, and then it became, well, a game collection sounds cool. Displaying them sounds like fun. I want this game, and then I bought, or I want to go for a 64 set, and then I got a Wii U, and I'm like, well, the Wii U's really cool. There's only like 100 and something games for it. I'm going to buy all those games, and I did. And it slowly morphed into, just having a lot of everything. And now it's just at a point where I don't think I need this much. I think I would rather use the space and the money just on something more interesting, something I like a little bit better. And again, not that I don't like collecting games, not that I don't like playing my games, not that I don't want a lot of my games. As you can tell, I still have a ton of games, and again, there are more in other places in this room. This isn't like I'm getting rid of the entire collection. I just thought it would be better to trim it down. I don't need, the original copies and the re-releases or the bundles or whatever. Like, an example, I just realized I had Sly Cooper 1, 2, and 3 on the PS2. Cool. I also have Sly Cooper Collection on the PS3. Do I need both? Not really. The collection on the PS3 is fine. And I've never even played it. I've never played any Sly Cooper games. They look really fun. I want to play them. But I have them on the PS3. I don't need them on the PS2. So get rid of the PS2 copies. That's just 3 games out of the collection. That saves a chunk of space for me to keep one game that just has them all on there. Same thing with like the Genesis collections. The Genesis games get released constantly on everything. I don't need them. Intellivision, Atari games, they're released on everything. I don't need them. I don't need the original systems. I don't even like setting up the original systems. They're a pain in the ass. So like, they can go. I don't play them enough to justify having them and the games when I have an Atari collection on the Switch, I think. Or the place, yeah. I have an Atari collection somewhere. And like, that's good enough. That has the games I'm going to realistically want to play. And the ones that I don't like, there's a Superman game on the Atari, and there's a Donkey Kong on the Intellivision. Those are neat, but I could emulate that if I really want to. If I really want to, I could just play that on my computer. The Donkey Kong, like, I'm not going to play that on television anyway. That game's terrible on that system. The system isn't even really good. But I have it on, like, the NES and stuff. Like, I don't need it on the Intellivision. It's cool to have, and as a Donkey Kong fan, I'm keeping that and just as a piece to display, but it's not something I'm, ever actually going to use. It's just a Donkey Kong thing that's really cool, so I have it. I think that's the point, though. Just toning it back a little bit to be more manageable and more of what I actually want and less of just a bunch of nonsense. So with that, we're going to end the video here. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. Tell me how your game collection is going. Are you still enjoying collecting games? I'm not really, but I enjoy having some of them. And I do enjoy when I get to find something I'm actually looking for now. But let me know how it's going for you, and we'll be back soon with a new game room tour. That's kind of where this video came from. I was redoing the room, I bought new shelves, so they're all the same matching shelf, roughly. And like, it looks a lot better in here, so we're going to do a new game room tour. There's still obviously one glaring issue that I'm not a fan of, but we're going to show a game room tour anyway. That'll be next. Thanks for watching, and we'll be back. Bye.